EICRs, Electrical Inspection Condition Reports. I don't know about anybody else, but they're the bane of my life. I don't really like doing them, but it's a good way to get more work, and obviously landlords and people need them before they sell the house, and some people just want them to see what condition their wiring's in, whether they need any work doing. So it's a job for electricians to do everywhere, and there's a sequence to it. You want to get it done as quick as possible, but there's some steps you've got to take to make sure you don't miss anything. So what I've done, I've devised a plan over, I was trying to think earlier, how many EICRs have I done in my life? I haven't got a clue, a shed load. So I've devised a plan of what steps I take to start with to see how I can get it done quickest. Like, I just want to get it done, get out of there, get the report done and give it to the customer and obviously get paid. It's a bit boring for me, so I like to get it done as quick as possible. Right, so what we'll start with is a visual inspection to start with. You want to check little things, just to go around and have a look, see if there's any signs of overheating. There's something you might have to look into later on. If there's missing blanks, whilst all the time filling the EICR report out. Like what page you go to the page with the recommendations and stuff like that, C1, C2 and C3s. So you can put the missing blanks as incorrect labelling, the mixed colour protective devices, if they've got a sticker on there, don't have to put anything on there. Incorrect IP rating. This can be sort of the bathroom light or something like that, or an outside socket. It's a rare occasion, but you do get it every now and again where someone's stuck just a plastic, or a metal clad socket outside. No good. There's got to be a proper IP rated socket for the outside environment. It's going to cause you problems in the long run, and yeah, you can't have them basically. Evidence of any DIY work, something you might want to flag up, especially if someone's clipped some cabling just along the hallway, right, either diagonally or just a complete mess. Outside, especially when a DIY guy come along and he put twin and earth on the outside wall. 100% DIY, because twin and earth don't go outside. It's open to the elements, so it's not suitable for the environment. That's another thing you can put down on your certificate. No SBD fitted, not really something that you'll give a C1 or C2 for. Depends on the date when you're doing it, but it's nice to put on there. Just something you might recommend putting an SBD in later on. No RCD protection. Again, this is something that some of the circuits don't have. If you've got a 16th edition board, you've got no RCD protection. Normally on the lighting, there might be a cooker or something that's thrown on there as well. But normally if the sockets are protected by an RCD, still it's going to be satisfactory. Right, and then checking in your main earthing. A lot of the time, a lot of houses that I've been to lately, they haven't got the bonding up to scratch. So you've got to make sure they've got a 10mm bonding to the gas, 10mm bonding to the water. The correct conductor size, again, 10mm. And this is something where you take the cover of the board off and you see there's a 32 amp fuse. And if it's got 2.5 going into it, you've got to flag it up. That's a C2 even. No, C1, yeah, because it's bloody dangerous. Loose or corroded connections. It's a good idea, because if there's loose or corroded connections within that board or something you can see to start with, then yeah, definitely label that down, because if it's loose or corroded, then it's going to be corroded for a reason. There's damp getting in there, so you've got to label that. Cracked sockets, there's a shed load of them all the time. Burn marks, this is more likely when someone's overheated a socket. Signs of arcing. Normally you'll see signs of arcing, possibly in a loose connection in maybe a switch. If it's an old switch, I've done it knowing the times where you take the switch off and the cables just fall out. Well, this is because they've been loose. They've been loose over time. There's a bird running on the top of the bleeding garage roof. I wondered what it was. So is there any incorrect polarity indicators? Well, this is just where you go through visually to plugging in your little socket tester, and it will tell you whether the polarity is wrong to start with. Is there any exposed cables? Exposed cables means when you're terminating into the board, you can't see any exposed single insulation. I can guarantee you as well, if you go to a property that's been wired a long time ago and there's a lot of faults in that property, you pull the downlights down, there's going to be some exposed single insulation, or possibly exposed copper terminals in there sometimes. A lot of people used to do that, and I think they thought it was okay, but it's rubbish. You can't have it. Basically, you've got to recommend it to be improved. Unsupported cables. This is another one that happens a lot. An unsupported cable where they've clipped it on the outside wall and they've put a couple of clips in and you see it looping. 9 times out of 10 it's more like a twin and earth, but if they've done an armoured cable possibly where they've clipped it along, then there is also going to be a recommendation to clip that cable securely because yeah, it's looping down, it's hanging off. So unsupported cable, that's another thing you got to do. Incorrect zones. This is a bit of a difficult one because you can't really tell if the property's plastered, things are in the incorrect zones. An incorrect zone to put on an EICR would be something like a 240 fan inside of a bathroom. If that's got the actual terminations inside the actual shower or inside of the bath area of the zone 1, then yeah, label it up. It also depends how high that ceiling is. So this is knowing your stuff once again. Damaged insulation. Sometimes you will notice damaged insulation because there's rats or rodents, or what I saw the other day, someone had rewired the house years ago. When they were pulling the cables in, they've damaged the insulation. You could see copper through that cable. It was a 6mm feed to a shower. Yep, stupid. Like this was happens. Like people don't notice it. It will test out fine, but if you can physically see some damaged insulation, you've got to write it down. Again, when you're going around and you're whipping the sockets off and testing them, stuff like that, the knockout boxes, sometimes people don't bother putting grommets in. Like, what are they? 10p? Less than that? £3 for a packet of 100? Like, they put your grommets in the sockets, but if it hasn't got grommets in the sockets, that's another thing you've got to write down on the EICR. Poor containment. This is where you've got a cable run and it's just sagging down. More than likely where the fuse board is. All your cables, they go straight up the wall. Sometimes people don't bother putting it in trunking. They just let it go straight up the wall for, I was going to put it in trunking later. Or they didn't bother and it's just not supported. It's hanging off there. It's poor containment, stuff like that. Signs of water ingress. You can see sometimes in the bottom of a box or bottom of a board, this is where water's got in. Possibly if it's something that's happened ages ago, then you can just wipe it clean and it'll be fine. But if you can see that there's water been in there, it's a good idea to maybe point that out, that water's getting in your fuse board or water's getting in your sockets somewhere other. Or in lighting. If people have had a leak, sometimes you take a light down and you can see there's been water in there. You can sort of tell that there's been water inside that light. So that's another good thing to put down on your EICR. Condensation. Sometimes lights that are fitted in the wrong environment, they've got condensation inside. Maybe an outside light where it's got wet and condensation's got inside and rusted the components. That's another thing you want to label down to say, look, I recommend you change them lights, or take them lights down and refit them if the lights are okay. Corrosion, again, there's a lot of corrosion inside fittings because if damp or condensation gets in there, it's going to corrode the actual terminations. Outdoor accessories that are damaged. A lot of time, again, this is things that we're employed to do. We're employed to point out, we're paid to point out, in effect, is outdoor sockets. People smash the covers off no end of times because when you clip them down, there's a little clip. Sometimes they're tough. If people who don't understand how they work or they're a bit weak, they just smash them off because they want to use that socket. Then later on, they'll put a bit of tape around it. If it's damaged, you've got to point it out, in effect. So that's the visual part of it. Now you got to crack on to the rest of it. So this is where you've got to start writing down the installation characteristics. Basically, is it a TT system, PME system, a TNCS system, something like that? And then start with your ZE, the ZE of the board. Write down what earthing arrangement it is and the ZE of the actual board. And then the supply voltage, write that down as well. And the earthing conductor size. All these details matter of what you've got to write down in this EICR. You've got to give the customer as much information as possible, not just for the customer, but to cover your ass in case something comes back. Because the reason that a lot of customers want these EICRs is for insurance. And then the consumer unit details. Like you write down maybe the model of the consumer unit. Hager, if it's a Hager board. It's a Hager consumer unit. Sometimes you can see the serial number inside the box. If you take the cover off, inside there'll be a label telling you what model it is, and then you can see the MCBs as well. And then sometimes they've got mixed MCBs in there. just write that down, that they've got mixed MCBs inside that consumer unit, because that will just cover your ass. As much information as possible is the best thing. And then the main switch, the rating, that's more likely going to be 100 amps. It depends. If it's an older one, it could be 60 amps, it could be an RCD, anything like that. But obviously write that down on that test certificate as well. And then start jotting down or typing out the scheduled, what's inside that board. This is before you, when you've done your visual, if there's a 32 amp breaker with a 2.5 cable in, you know for a fact that it ain't gonna pass, but it's gonna be easy to just nip it next door into a 16 amp MCB if it's in there. Or if you're very, very nice and you have one in the van, go get a 16 amp MCB. If it's Hager again, you might not have the same brand, but put that in the board just to make it safe. Sometimes like that with bits that I think are quite dangerous, then I'd rather do there and then. And of course, step 3, safe isolation. Knock that board off so it's dead as a doornail. Obviously you can't pull the main fuse, but if it's got an isolator on there, then lock that main isolator off, and that'll kill the supply so you can do all your dead testing. And if the meter cupboard is outside as well, maybe put a little notice on it. If you can't lock that meter cupboard, because some dingbat might come along and turn it on, especially if you're all working in the same property. Someone will go, oh, I need to charge my drill, or I need electric for my 110 volt kit. Then they'll just come along, bang it on. If you're testing it, or you're running through doing your tests and you've got live wires in your hand, you're flipping going to get a shock. So make sure there's no way that anyone can turn that bleeding fuse on to make sure you don't get hurt, basically. And this is also a good idea to check that you can safe isolate the circuit. Not just necessarily the main switch, but all the MCBs and RCBOs and stuff like that work. Make sure they go off, because if they're knackered and they're stuck on, they ain't never going to work anyway. So make sure that they switch off, the functionality of them work properly. Even if before you nip the main isolator, nip all the RCDs, press all the RCDs, test all the RCDs. So this is where you start off with your continuity testing, your R1, R2s. Basically, you're testing to see if it is a clear circuit. Sometimes you will get a little bit of a reading through if it's on a lighting circuit or you've got things plugged in. So make sure you can unplug everything, because on a ring circuit, sometimes people have got plugs behind appliances. You'll normally know if you get a certain reading through the neutral and the earth, because yeah, there'll be some sort of capacitor or something in there, but you'll learn that over time, that if you get a certain amount of a reading, then it's still okay because something's plugged in. But if you can, knock it all off, unplug everything, so you're not going to get a reading through anything. And then on your testing, when you're doing continuity, especially on a ring main, you're doing the live, the neutral and the earth, and then the figure of 8, always record the highest reading, because that's the worst case scenario. So you want to record that down, so that's on the bit of paper to say this is the reading I got, so then next 10 years or 5 years, depends when they redo the test again, they can see how much it is deteriorating. And all the time while you're going through doing the continuity testing, you're always keeping in mind your visual checks as well, because then you can test if there's loose connections and to make sure that the readings should be right. Because sometimes on a ring main, if it's a high reading, you sometimes think, right, these are old sockets, they're all loose, it's gonna be high. As long as it's within the characteristic, long as it's within the readings that you're allowed on that circuit, it will still be satisfactory. But if it's high, write that down, saying you need further in the investigation of that circuit because it's got such a high reading. There might be every single socket has been tightened up really, well, not tightened up properly basically, and they're really loose. That's going to give you a high reading. So then once you've done all your continuity tests and you're confident to say, yeah, that's all right, we can find out the condition of the wiring and what the resistance of that wiring, so you can sort of know if they're any good, or you can recommend, say, look, this is going to need a rewire. They are ruined. Then you will turn the power back on and do your earth loop testing. And with your earth loop testing, you can also do the polarity, because once you plug your bit of kit in, it'll tell you whether there's a live and neutral one around or something like that. You can normally figure that out when you plug in your tester as well to see if there's a polarity. If there is, then you can sort that out along the way or figure out why, because a lot of people oh, I've seen it sometimes before where they've got 2 or 3 sockets where they've got replaced them sockets, but the live and neutral are maybe the other way round to the other sockets. So they've got 3 sockets that are reverse polarity. So this is why you have to check every socket, because if it's reverse polarity, that's a problem. And then once you've done everything of all your testing and you're happy, you've got your R1, R2s, you've got your loop readings from everywhere, and you've got your trip readings from the RCD. If that circuit is protected by an RCD, we only have to do the RCD 1 time now. We used to have to do it 5 times, but now we have to do it 1 time. Sometimes I just check it as well to make sure that it's on half as well. I don't know, I like playing with my tester, so I just check it out to make sure that it still works. But yeah, just do the 1 time to get the speed of the RCD tripping. If it's a 30 milliamps, if it's a 100 milliamp RCD, obviously set your tester for that as well. But make sure your tester's set to the right settings. My tester, it's a bit of a palaver sometimes. I've been through and tested them all when I had it on a 100 milliamp settings, when I was meant to have it on a 30 milliamp settings. So I had to do it all again. But this is the thing, you want to make sure you've got your tester set at the right settings to be able to test that circuit, especially on a 30 milliamp RCD. So this is the workflow of how I'd go through testing with an EICR. To get that test sheet all filled out, ready to give to the customer and get paid. And if you want a copy of what I've just run through, check in the links below and there'll be a link where you can go and download that copy and then get into a habit of how you do your EICRs, because the quicker you do them, the quicker they're out of there and you've got cash in your hand. Till next time, I'll see you again.